In today's world that is very noisy, the only thing that you can do to break through is to stand the f*** out. You're gonna have to really go all the way to the edge of the map to stand the f*** out. Not compromise, not doing an average job where you feel like you could do better.
But how do you stand out? Let's explore this via your methodology.
Like, give me the f***ing tea, right? Give me the concrete stuff I can use in my business today, not in a week. Don't make me think about it.
You said there were 6 insights that we were looking for. So who are you for? Can you name the other ones?
So the 6th insight is...
That's a lot to take in.
Yeah, but do you want to stand the fuck out or not, you know?
Hrefs Podcast.
So I thought we'd start with parental advisory, because based on the name of your book, I expect there be quite a few curse words, profanity. So if anyone listening has their kids around, kids under what, 16, 13, please go have them play Fortnite or something. There can be some strong language ahead.
There won't be strong language on Fortnite whatsoever.
Also true. Yeah. So based on your LinkedIn alone, you worked 3 years as a content marketer at Hotjar until 2020. You hosted Everyone Hates Marketer podcast for 7 years. Since 2017, 7 years, that's a lot. And most recently, you published a book called Stand the Fuck Out. It's good we have parental advisory already. You published it in 2024, is that correct?
Yeah, 4 months ago.
So yeah, basically the bulk of this podcast would probably be digging into your methodology.
Sure.
Because I want to learn it myself, and I think a lot of people listening would also want to. Yeah, exactly. The one you describe in your book. Still, I find it. I don't think we'll do you a disservice by talking about what's in your book, because typically all those podcast interviews or notes or takeaways from the book don't replace the actual experience of reading the full thing with all the stories, with all the examples, yada yada yada. Do you agree with me?
Yeah. Look, it's. I don't think it's yet another marketing book in that sense, and so usually you have marketing books that have one core idea and they talk about it, and you feel like it could be a blog post. Mm-hmm. It could be a Href blog post, like a long enough blog post that is in depth. And I really didn't want to do that with that book. I didn't want to you shouldn't be able to summarize it in 20 seconds without wanting to go deeper and deeper and deeper. So yeah, I'm more than happy to go through it and to give actionable stuff to people listening, because that's what I care about, trying to help as many as possible.
You shouldn't be able to summarize it in 20 seconds, but we'll do our best to summarize it in this podcast interview. The question I want to start from, I actually enjoyed how you started your podcast with Seth Godin, where you just said, we need to start a business together, and you went straight in. I'll still kind of start from a slightly different angle, because you are an expert and you're teaching people branding and positioning. You teach them to stand the fuck out. I'm cursing more than you at this point, which is very strange.
Yeah, you see, I've been very well behaved.
So the first question is, because I feel that a lot of people who care about branding and positioning, they already have it in one shape or form. So how do people know that their brand or their positioning is bad?
Because it feels hard. It feels like you're swimming upstream, right? I mentioned my previous agency before. So I launched an agency 10 years ago, even more at this stage, around conversion rate optimization in Dublin, Ireland. And when you have a positioning that is not super well defined, or you're struggling and you're juggling between different markets and whatever, it's going to feel hard. Everything is going to feel like you're trying to convince people to buy from you. They don't come to you. You're trying, you can't find the words to describe briefly what you do. You change your mind all the time, so anxiety, overwhelm is always there. It just doesn't click, right? And it's as much as a gut feeling as it is a business, like a business kind of result or diagnosis out of it. So that's usually what happens. It's difficult to say this is the one telltale sign. It's just the overwhelm, I would say, the pressure, the fact that you're not settled. You don't have foundations, strong foundations.
Isn't there some kind of exercise that you can try to take and realize that you're struggling with it and therefore your positioning isn't good?
In the book or in general?
No, just generally.
Well, I mean, again, it's one of those things where I wish there was like a black and white test where you can know for sure you're struggling, you're not struggling, or whatnot. But I don't think it's as simple as that, because it's nuance. It's 50 shades of gray, right? It's not just black or white. It's you can have a very strong segment definition. So you might know exactly who you're for and who you're not for, but you might be struggling on the other hand with what to offer that is different from the rest, right? So you might have an ingredient but not the other. So like usually if you're able to say in one sentence that you're the only one in that specific category, so for Ahrefs it'd be SEO software, just to simplify, we are the only SEO software that solve those ignored struggles. So those are the problems that other alternatives are not solving well or not at all for this group of people, in your own way, right? Like this unique positioning statement in one sentence. If you're not able to clearly write, this is who we are for, this is why we are, those are the problems we solve that others are not solving, then that means there is no clarity, and therefore your positioning might be not that good.
I'm just trying to differentiate between subjective opinions about someone's business and how they position themselves, and something objective where you can clearly point at something, I don't know, data, numbers, behavior of your customers, and say, here, this is because of your positioning. Because there are so many bells and whistles in the business. You have the product market fit. How is it different from positioning? You have, I don't know, your marketing. You might have marketers who are not doing a good job of, I don't know, advertising, promoting you. You might, like your website design might be bad. So I'm looking for, because again, if I would come to you with Ahrefs, not necessarily you, to any expert in branding and positioning, and I would say, let's work on our brand. I don't think any branding expert would say, no, it's great. Like you're doing fine. We cannot really help you. So they would always find it's as if I've heard the phrase. I don't remember who it belongs to. Maybe some writer from the past century or something. That if you ask for feedback, you'll always get it. So like. Shakespeare would bring his writing to his peers and they would shred it apart, even though right now we consider it perfect.
Yeah. So there is multiple facets to it, and we need to distinct to make a difference between differentiation and distinctiveness, and also positioning, product market fit, and whatever, right? So positioning is really the ability to say, unlike other alternatives, we are the only one in that category to solve those ignored struggles, get the job done for that specific segment, right? So you might have, for example, people come to me when their sales are not growing, revenue is stalling, they feel like things are not as easy as it could be. They might want to grow their podcast and they feel like it's harder than it could be, right? Because maybe there's too much competition and they can't differentiate and whatever, right? And so there's always, they don't just come to us, to people like me, just because they like my beard and my French accent and therefore they want to work with me. There's always an underlying business issue, right? Always. And it's almost always revenue related, right? There is a struggle to reach their goal. There's a struggle to explain what they do. There's a struggle to sell. There's a struggle to close deals. It's pretty much all of that, right? So are you in a category that is in demand? That's the one of the tests. To me, it's like, Are you reinventing the wheel with a new category or category that doesn't exist? Or are you in a category that is where demand is already flowing? Money is flowing with or without you. You're not trying to reinvent the wheel. You're not trying to be God. You're not trying to be like this person generating demand. No, you're catching the demand that is much bigger than you and your category, and you're catching a part of it, right? Ahref, perfect example. SEO is in demand, will always be, even if things change, but like you're capturing demand that is already there. You're not trying to create something from scratch that no one knows about, right? Time and time again, that's what I see is the biggest telltale sign, is that they don't know what they are, or they are in a category that just is not sexy, doesn't really work. Just to give you a quick example, in my past, I used to work for a text marketing startup. That was my first job in marketing. And it was so hard to sell SMS marketing to businesses because they didn't want it. It was effective, but they just didn't find it sexy enough. They were interested in social media ads because at the time it was very like the next best thing. They were interested in email. Even though SMS was extremely powerful, they just didn't fucking want it. And we struggled so hard to just close deals to sell that technology. And so in that instance, the category wasn't in demand enough. So we had to it was such hard work to convince anyone to buy. So usually that is almost always an issue. The second telltale sign then will be the segment. So are you able to say with confidence who exactly you're serving? And I don't mean demographic, firmographic stuff like B2B marketers with 20 plus years of experience, blah, blah, blah. I mean a group of people who have struggles that in common, problems that are roughly the same, that you can serve in a way that others can't, right? So it's not like just persona or target market or whatever you want to call it, or product market fit, like just the market part. It's really like the core of differentiation. Do you offer something that people want that others are not able to offer you? And who are the people who care the most about this, right? So that's also a telltale sign. But you can see it's like it's also such an emotional problem for people, business owners, CEOs and whatnot, and even for teams. It is highly emotional. It's highly sentimental for some. They're very much attached to their brand, to what they do, that a rational scientific assessment is not enough to make them realize that they need to change, or that to make them realize that they need to do something different, right? It's they need to feel understood. They need to feel like they're in the right track, but they're not just there yet. It's more than just the rational scientific black and white product market fit or not, or that kind of stuff. Does it make sense? You don't like that?
It's a bit hard to grasp because I'm thinking of Ahrefs, and to be honest, in 10 years that I've been with the company, we didn't really define who we are for as much as we defined what we do. Because we are kind of an SEO tool, so SEO professionals should use us. But we have like tens of thousands of paying customers. We have hundreds of thousands of people who are using free tier, free products. And not all these people are describing themselves as SEO professionals. Some people are business owners. Some people are content marketers. Some people are marketers. Some people are hobbyists, whatever. So instead of defining who we are for, we are focusing on what we do, what we can help you with. Like if you want to grow search traffic to your website, and we don't care who you are, whether you are a stay-at-home mom.
But you just said it. You just said it. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. And I'm doing a poor job at it perhaps. But you don't care about what they are, their role or their industry. But the thing that they all have in common is they want to grow their organic traffic.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's exactly what I meant. So like you are able to very briefly describe who you're for. And let me just tell one thing. Ahref is the worst example to go through for a company to want to stand the fuck out, because you already do. You never really had that problem. You've been in a category that is in demand. You've done a really good job. And so you don't feel the struggle I'm describing. I can tell you you're not. Like, based on the growth you've had, you might have small challenges, you've rebranded, like you've done a few stuff, but you've been on a fucking roll for the last 10 years. You've done a fucking amazing job in terms of content marketing and everything in between. Bootstrapped, all of that. I don't need to sing your praises more. Like, so you don't really understand and feel what I'm trying to describe here. But I can tell you one thing. Folks listening who are like SEO agency owners, for example, to just talk about the kernel of your market, maybe the ones that are way more likely to know about Ahrefs, who want to grow search traffic, are probably SEO professionals, right? Like, it's an easy assumption to make. I can tell you that those people struggle to stand the fuck out because there are thousands and thousands of competitors offering pretty much exact same thing as them, who say pretty much exact same thing as them in their pitch on their website with exactly the same branding that, by the way, they are not proud of, and they don't like their website because it's they need to update it. Like, it's almost always the same. They understand what I'm trying to say here when it comes to like swimming upstream and whatever. So you can't apply that to Ahrefs. It's just the worst fucking thing. It's just the worst example ever, because you're not in that position.
First of all, thanks for catching up with me on profanity.
You're welcome.
Secondly,
I'm getting worked up now, so I'm ready to go now.
Secondly, even if Ahrefs is not a good example of a company that needs to improve their positioning and branding, maybe we can try to discuss this podcast, Ahrefs podcast, because I have no idea what I'm doing with it. I don't really define my audience, who is it for, and my guests are very, very diverse in terms of their backgrounds. So I'm not sure if we can try to discuss your methodology while at the same time trying to implement it for something like a podcast.
Sure. So the first step is foraging for insights. So finding insights from reliable sources that you can use for your own podcast. So if let's take the example of you're starting this and you don't have data yourself. You don't have like listener data, feedback, whatever. So you have to rely on insight that you can use from other sources. So what I would do straight away is I probably would look at other marketing podcasts that are roughly around the same theme, roughly around the same style. And I would scrape reviews, because that's probably the fastest way to do it for that use case, to identify the 6 core insights that you need in order to start having like a strong positioning. So I want to know what's the goal, why are people listening to this? I want to know what other stuff they've listened to or read or whatever to solve that, to reach that goal. I want to know the problems they might have. I want to know who they are. I want to know the category, and I want to know the triggers, what make them listen, right? So I would rely on insight that already exists in the wild in order to start making a rough hypothesis of who care about those stuff, right, the most. So in your example, I don't know, if you had to pick one other podcast that is similar.
Yours.
Okay, so you're picking the best marketing podcast that is ever made. Okay, good luck. No, so the people. So for example, for my podcast, Everyone Has Marketers, what people want is to grow their business. That's roughly why they're listening in some way, right? So that's the core job, right? So I would write that down as the key, as the kind of the flag in the ground. This is roughly what they want to do. Mm-hmm. Alternatives. What else have they looked into? So instead of listening to me, who else are they listening to, right? If you go to Listen Notes or any other stuff, it's easy to find your competitors. But I would go deeper than that. Like for folks who want to listen or want to grow their business, who want to get help on like specific stuff, like, I don't know, go to market, whatever. They might buy books on Amazon. They might do other stuff, right? they might hire an expert to help them, right? So podcasting is not the only alternative. Listening to other podcasts is not the only alternative. So that gives us a better idea of what's actually going on in their head and why people are listening to something. So the struggles, to me, that the core thing that people always said is that they are sick and tired of marketing bullshit, meaning that they don't want to listen to a podcast that have like that takes 30 minutes to get into the meat of it, that talks about the guest and their life from their birth to their teenagehood to their whatever. They want to get like, give me the fucking tea, right? Give me the concrete stuff I can use in my business today, not in a week. Don't make me like think about it. Give me the details, right? And that's like always been something that I wanted, because that's my own problem that I wanted to solve. And so I think the answer for you, and then I'll keep going with the insight, but the answer for you comes from within, right? Meaning it's why you started that podcast in the first place. And are you going as deep as you want to when it comes to what you want to solve for yourself? Like, you're clearly doing it for a reason. It's clearly not to grow Ahrefs. You don't need a podcast to grow the software. So over to you. Why?
So first of all, when you let's discuss the underlying strategy of inside foraging, as it is called in your book.
Yeah.
So one could argue, or specifically I can argue, that this inside foraging can bring you to the insights that you want to hear. Yes, you can be absolutely blind to what people are saying and only be receptive to what you want to hear. So in a sense, if you just answer those questions for yourself, like, who is my podcast for? Like you said, you want to, your podcast is for people who want to grow their businesses. I'd say that my podcast is for people who want to get better at marketing. And however more podcast or inside foraging I would do, I wouldn't necessarily change my mind based on what people are talking about your podcast, because you have a podcast in the marketing space, kind of my direct competitor. But I see it differently, and therefore inside foraging can be very kind of biased towards what I have in my head already.
Yeah, and that's how it should be. I think it should be biased, because it's a personal project, something that starts with you, your opinion and point of view, and some would disagree with that. Some will want something else, and that's fine. Like in that stage, for a project like that, it's completely fine to be biased. Like if you start to try to be objective and weigh down, okay, 65% of people want this, and then 20 want this, so let's create the most average fucking thing by bringing 65% of this and then 20% of that, and just please all the feedback providers, like making sure that everyone gets a little bit of something. That's the best way to blend the fuck in, right? To stand the fuck out. Can you list
again? Can you blend the fuck in?
Yeah, like that, huh?
Yeah. It didn't register with me immediately, but then
it took you 10 seconds.
You said there were 6 insights that we were looking for. So who are you for? Can you name the other ones?
So the 6th insight is the job. What did they try to accomplish? What are they trying to accomplish? Alternatives. What other solutions have they used or considered? Struggles. What problem were they trying to solve? Segment. What customer information is relevant to the story we're telling now? Category. What other things belong in the same group as this product or service or podcast? And triggers. What specific events compel them to act? So
that's like, a lot to take in.
But do you want to stand the fuck out or not? You know. So this is the core. This is the core of the book, and this is why I said you can't summarize it in one single blog post, because it requires real work, and you can't just find a concept, an idea, something that just stand the fuck out in today's market that is extremely noisy, where everyone and their grandma can have a podcast, without digging deep into maybe what you want out of a podcast or what people want out of a podcast, without those 6. And some people are extremely intuitive at it. Like you're probably this kind of person who you don't need to voice out and write everything down. Like you just intuitively, you know what feels right to you, and that's perfectly fine. But if you're in a bigger company and whatever, you can't just be intuitive all the time. You're going to have to put things down. And sometimes, even I'm pretty intuitive too, just putting things down really helps like to take distance out of it and find concepts that are a bit deeper. So yes, it is real work, but you need to know what you want, right? And I don't say that to you directly, I said to everyone listening.
No.
Like there's no secret, there's no shortcut, there is none of that shit. It's hard work. Absolutely, it's hard work. But guess what? Most people are not willing to do the hard work, and so that gives you a bit of an advantage. And you can ask AI all you want as well. It's not going to give you that flavor that you can add by adding your own bias and opinion. So again, if I was to scrape reviews of my podcast or any other marketing podcast, you're going to find a mixed bag. You're going to have people saying, oh, I love how actionable it is. But then you're going to have people saying, oh, I wish they spend a bit more time on each guest to understand who they are, because I love to hear their story. But you see, I don't care about that second part. All I wanted when I started your podcast is give me the tea, give me the actionable details that you don't share anywhere else, and don't bullshit me with your story. I want to know the detail. I want to know stuff you don't say elsewhere. And so, of course, when I go to my insight foraging, that's my own insight. That's my own struggle. That's the own thing I want. And that's enough to me because that's my own beliefs. Chances are other people would feel the same. So for people who are like you, very intuitive, that's perfectly fine to start from you, from within. But this means you cannot compromise on anything else. This means that if it's really what you want, whatever it is, you're going to have to go all in on it, 100%. You can't stop at 80, 90%. You're going to have to really go all the way to the edge of the map to stand the fuck out. Not compromise, not doing an average job where you feel like you could do better. Like you're going to have to commit to something, you know?
So I got this thought that with inside foraging, you kind of are looking for mistakes that other people made, as well as probably wins and the things they did right, where people would explicitly tell you, oh, this was awesome, this was bad. So you can basically make notes, whether it's a podcast or a product or whatever. Don't do this, do more of this, and this audience would like me because they explicitly told me what they like and don't like.
So,
and,
go ahead, sorry.
No, please reply because I have another angle at this.
Yeah, so that you need to be very careful with feedback, and I really like the fact that you're challenging this, because it's not as simple as reading feedback and, again, as I said, making a summary and whatever. You can't trust people, right? You can't trust them. You can't, like, they might say something as a status thing online to be seen as smart, but they might do something completely different. So the best insight to get are from people who've recently invested money, time, or resources into solving the particular problem or reaching the particular job that you've identified. And that means you need to be extremely careful with just qualitative feedback of people you don't really know. You need to be very careful with people who've never bought an SEO software, asking them what they want out of an SEO software. It's a minefield. So if you don't have insight that you can rely on, start from within. Start from you, what you care about, what you want, because chances are other people will. But that's pretty much as far as you can go. So yeah, you need to be very careful with feedback or with interviews or surveys or stuff like that. If you were to sell something physical like electric cars, you don't have to necessarily ask people questions. I would go to a car dealership and just look at how people buy. I would just eavesdrop into the question they ask and how they go. You can get a lot of insight without asking people anything, just by observing, just by being there at the right time, just by knowing your industry, just by going to events and conferences. It's more than enough to fill out to answer those 6 questions and get started. So you don't have to ask specifically, right? And my brain, the way it likes to work is through what do I hate, right? That's just how I get the most ideas. Yeah. So when there's something that really annoys me, I like to take note of it because I feel like I'm not the only one being annoyed. And yes, I tend to get very annoyed, but that's also my persona, my online public persona, not that angry all the time, right? But I like to double down on it because I recognize that, okay, I fucking hate this. Let's dig into that. Why do I hate it, right? Let me give you a quick example from my own book, because I actually set up a list of things that I didn't want or that I wanted from that book, because I was just so sick of the traditional marketing book industry. Let me just find the notes. So I had a set of criterias that I set myself before I wrote the book. It's loading now. There you go. Like one of them was, I don't want any war vocabulary in the book. So target and capture and fucking
attack.
anywhere. Yeah, I just can't. I just cannot. Right?
That is
just drives
very
me
specific.
Exactly. But that's the point. Specificity, by the way, is the key ingredient to standing the fuck out. You need to be specific in some way. You need to go deep, very deep in some ways. Because if you don't, then you're just going to answer stuff that are quite just like any other. So yeah, I don't like that. And that was prior to the war entering, Europe and all whatever. I just don't like talking about it in those terms. Just not for me. The other thing that pisses me off when I read marketing books or content in general about marketing is that they talk about the usual suspect all the time. When we talk about branding, everyone talks about Apple and Disney and Tesla and Harley Davidson. And that also annoys me because I don't like hearing from big brands. It doesn't apply to me. I don't have their budget. I don't have their history. I don't care about them. I couldn't care less about them. So I promised myself I will make the work. I will do the work to find examples that you've never heard about that are way more relatable, that you can actually learn from. Again, some might disagree. Some people love to hear about Apple because maybe it gives them inspiration and creativity, but that's not me. I don't care. I don't want that. I don't like it, right? So again, what I hate, right? Another thing that I really didn't want was mentioned it so many times already is I didn't want it to be a long blog post. I didn't want it to be rehashing the same story over and over again, the same idea. I wanted to go deep. I wanted to feel like every single word in those pages was meant to be there, that every single table, every single example was there for a reason. And yeah, that it would be like just efficient, right? Like just every word matters. And so that's why you can't just read it in one setting. I mean, you can, but you can't really apply it. So I can stop here, but that's how I get a lot of energy is like, I like to find out what I hate and then I kind of double down on the opposite. But there's plenty of other ways. That's just one way.
With something like a book, those things, they make a lot of sense because kind of you only have one chance to publish it. And
right.
Either it would fly or it will not. When we compare it to the podcast and even to software, the same piece of software can evolve over time and change positioning all the time, test things, cancel things, adopt new things. So the story of how this podcast started is I was, before even doing the first interview, I was researching what podcast agencies I can hire to help me outsource all the kind of menial work of, I don't know, transcribing, creating intro, uploading, creating all the chapters, blah, blah, blah. And each agency wanted to pitch me kind of a broader package that comes with positioning. And they were like, no, you cannot just outsource work to us. Let us help you since you haven't started the podcast yet. Let us help you with the idea, with the positioning, with the branding, who your podcast is for, blah, blah, blah. I was like, no, I cannot think of it. I just want to hop on a call with people whose work is interesting to me. And I want to talk with them about their work like I'm talking to you. You published a book. I have my own opinions and we're kind of talking it out. We're discussing how each of us sees the problem. So this is what I've done. I started interviewing people. We started uploading the episodes. And little by little, as you say, you cannot necessarily trust what people say, but you need to watch what people do. Another way to put it is people vote with their wallets, right? Are they buying your product? Are they buying your service? And that is kind of the ultimate test of positioning. Like you run ads and explain your product, your business in this way. And if you hit the target audience with the message that resonates with them, you will get signups. If you promote to the wrong people with the wrong message, you're not going to get any signups. In terms of podcast, we just started interviewing people, uploading the interviews, and seeing how they perform and what feedback we're getting from our audience. Yeah, like I said, this is not possible with a one-off thing. If you're writing a book, you want this book to be successful. You don't have another chance. Yeah, you can write the next book, but this book would be wasted. And book is like a lot of resources are going into it. While again, with the software, you always have time to pivot. Like famously, even though you don't like the big brands, famously YouTube started as a dating site or something like this, and then pivoted to video hosting platform. So I'm in the kind of camp, instead of kind of planning for it, just start doing it and then do the inside foraging for your product specifically.
That works as well. But there's a few things here that are important to note. First of all, this isn't a do or die project for you. Meaning, if it doesn't work, it's okay. So again, let's remember that folks listening, they might have, it's their own business at stake, right? And that their livelihood and the way they make money, the way they feed their family and stuff. I don't want to get dramatic, but that's true, right? So yes, you do want to get started. You do want to make some waves and see how it feels like and whatever. But it's also a bigger deal for some people. So you can afford to do this, which is fine. It's great. You can relaunch it and whatever. You'd be surprised, by the way, by how many books are being published that are completely horseshit and that didn't take a long time to write, right? And how many authors were unsuccessful with their first book. You kind of, I think you put book on a pedestal, but it applies as well. So that's the first argument I would say that is important to note. But the other one is, in today's world, that is very noisy, getting more and more noisy, right? The content-wise, company, everyone and their grandma can create an app and can write code now. It's getting easier and easier. That means that is commoditized. That means the only thing that you can do to break through is to stand the fuck out, is to actually do something with an intensity and with a gut, right, that you can only bring to the table, that will actually break through that noise. I do not disagree
with this. I'm with you on this completely. We're just at the stage of inside foraging, and I'm trying to understand kind of what other options do we have before we move to the next step. So, but I think we're ready to move to the next step.
Yeah, we're fucking ready. But the point is, the 6 questions I ask you, you can answer them within 2 minutes, and you move on. That's fine. There is different level. You can, that book and that methodology is really made to be like, you can run through it multiple times. In fact, that's what I encourage people to do. At first, go fast, go through all the steps, execute, see how it feels, see how people behave, then do it again when you have more data, and then again and again and again, right?
I also do admit that we're talking as 2 people who have been in the industry for more than a decade, and we've done those kinds of exercises, whether specifically on the piece of paper or in our heads many times, so it kind of comes naturally to us, and it's like it's a curse of knowledge, right? What seems obvious to you is not obvious for someone who's is like the first year in marketing, and they don't understand those things just as easy because they haven't been doing this for a decade. So I'm with you, but again, I don't know who my audience is, but I'm hoping that people are more on the senior side. This is why I'm approaching this more from the senior side, and sharing how I approach some of the things. But let's move on to the next step.
Just to cut you on this, just briefly before we move on to the next step, which is unique positioning. The other problem that people face is that they're too close to the product or the business they're in. And so even though they might have intuition and they know their business inside out, they can't read the label from inside the jar. That's a quote from David C. Baker, who wrote a good book of positioning as well. So they need this external stuff to extract from their head in order to know what's going on, right? And the other last argument is that some people are, even though they're very senior, might not have the same skills that you have, or the same qualities that I have, and the same, stuff that I'm very bad at, right? So everyone is a bit different, and some people actually struggle with this step, while they might do they might be way better at the unique positioning part and whatever. So that's why I think it was important to say. So just briefly, just to summarize this, focus on recent customers who've recently invested resources, if you can. Let go of the demographics, right? Don't think of demographics only. Just think of Ahrefs, It's for people who want to grow their organic traffic. Use the 6 core insights, so the job, alternative, struggle, segment, category, and triggers, and then get scrappy or die trying, right? Which is one of the summary I said. So once you have that, unique positioning.
Wait, what is get scrappy or die trying?
Meaning,
exactly
for me,
what
it
reminds how we started this podcast. We just started doing without over-investing in it, and then little by little improving.
Exactly, yeah. Like become a customer yourself, talk to competitors, clients. If you don't have a business, like just get something. Don't spend 6 months on that stage and make pretty slide and pretty spreadsheets. Get started. I completely agree.
Awesome. Let's move on to the second step in the 4-step methodology.
Yeah, unique positioning. So what is it, huh? So the key is it started with my discussion that I had with Seth Godin in my podcast, and he made a point about how do you differentiate when you are in a boring category and whatever, and he couldn't really give me an answer that was satisfying to me because he doesn't like giving the map. He doesn't like giving the map. He wants you to figure shit out, and so he never really likes to give you like actual steps and whatever. But the question that always, yeah, I know, that annoyed me forever was, how do you actually take a normal business, like let's say an SEO agency, and how do you differentiate it in a way that is meaningful, meaning that people care about that, in a way that is like without having to resort to hacks and tricks, in a way that is repeatable, meaning you put them through a process, and if they do it properly, at the end they are able to say, we are the only one that does that thing for that group that others can't. You are able to create something that is meaningful for people, and they come to you even if you have bigger competitors. So that was the question I asked myself when I started to think of the methodology like 4 years ago, and so that stage is the answer to this, right? So you want to, I think the core of it is that you don't want to be different for the sake of being different. That doesn't matter. You don't go to the supermarket to say, hey, I need to find a different toilet paper today. People don't think that way. What you want to do is find a meaningful difference, meaning something that people care about that others are not doing well or not at all. And once you have that, I call them ignored struggles, the problems that are ignored by others. Once you have that, you have the kernel of a differentiation, meaning of a unique positioning. That will make people come to you more likely instead of going to bigger competitors, because there's a meaningful reason to go to you and not the others.
So since you mentioned SEO agencies, because we have so many of them among our clients, and they have friends who are owners of SEO agencies, and this is also a question I asked a few people in previous interviews, like how do you grow an SEO agency to hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue? So as you mentioned positioning for SEO agencies, I thought immediately of kind of two, I don't know, loopholes or shortcuts or something. The first shortcut that I thought of is the founder brand, because some of the most successful SEO agencies that I know of are based on a well-known founder. Again, you don't have to go far. Gary Vee owns a social media agency. His agency is very big. Neil Patel, one of the most famous people in digital marketing, owns a huge agency. My friend Jason Hennessy, he also has a pretty decent brand, like a personal brand. He wrote books, he does podcasts, etc. He has a very successful SEO agency for law firms. He's very kind of niche.
Yeah.
But the second thing, the second way for SEO agencies to, I will later ask you if you agree or disagree with me on this.
Don't worry, you don't need to ask me.
The thoughts,
I'll tell you.
The thoughts I had in the moment. And the second way is by who your clients are. Because I think, if I think of big SEO agencies which I have never heard about. For example, recently I discovered a marketing agency called Dentsu. And when I looked up their revenues, they're freaking huge, but I have no idea who they are, who their founder is. But they immediately hooked me with big clients that they have. And like the differentiation kind of stood out by itself. Oh, these are the guys for those big, I know, Fortune 500 companies. They know how to work with them. They have all the client services, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, these are my thoughts in terms of unique positioning for agencies specifically, because yeah, I think it's such a hard problem. Anyone can start an agency within the next 2 hours. You just create a website, your agency is done. But how do you stand out? So let's explore this via your methodology.
So founder brand is not part of positioning. It's more like acquisition and whatever. It's not really going to change your unique positioning statement. It doesn't give people a meaningful reason to pick you. The second part, though, is part of the answer, who your clients are. Because you said something interesting. You said, let's say you have an agency like for Fortune 500 companies. Those agencies know how to work with them, which implies that those agencies know the problems that those Fortune 500 companies have that others don't. And so this is where, when you start digging, you find out that maybe Fortune 500 companies have extreme need for, like, let's say, localization, an extreme need for, like, maybe in-depth reporting, much bigger than like any other companies, extreme need for, like, they have multiple product lines and maybe they don't want to cannibalize each other. Like, so they have like extreme need for like making sure that their organic traffic doesn't cannibalize organic traffic for the other brands they own. Like, so I'm coming up with that. Like, I don't know exactly, but when you start narrowing down and looking into that, this is where you find ignored struggles. Because when you dig into the specificity, you realize that those companies struggle with those way more than the average company. In fact, some companies don't care at all about localization. They don't care at all about multiple brands. So when you start digging into that and go into the specificity, then you understand, okay, they have problems that others don't, and they care about them a lot. Are they being served well by alternatives? And so this is when you dig deep and you're like, you mentioned your law firm, same thing. Law firms in the US can't advertise. Or in Europe, for example, they can't advertise, right? In France, at least. In the US, they can, but anyway. But there's a lot of legal ramification to it. You can't claim everything. And so you need an SEO agency that understands the legal aspect and the laws so that they don't get into trouble. Again, the average company don't give a shit about this because they sell Amazon products or e-commerce stuff. There's no legal, it doesn't even enter their psyche. So you see, when you zoom in into a specific group of people, you can see that they have struggles in common that they care about a lot, that others don't. And so this is what I mean by like finding those ignored struggles, is your ability to find problems that some people care about way more than the others that are not being served super well.
How is it different from niching down? Because you have 100% of marketing agencies. And if you want to differentiate, you can start one for law firms. But then you have 100% of marketing agencies for law firms. Yeah. And you still need to stand the fuck out.
Yeah, so it's specificity. So positioning is part of the answer. In stage 3, we'll talk about distinctiveness and how it's different and how you need to have both. But to talk about unique positioning, niching down is the result of that work. It doesn't start with niching down, it stops with it. Meaning you first need to find struggles that people have, and then you ask yourself, who cares the most about those struggles? And let me find the people who really, really care about them the most. So let's take an example. Let's say we've noticed most of our clients really struggle with localization because they have so many brands and whatever and different languages, and they don't know how to handle like domain, subdomain, subfolder, whatever the fuck, right? We noticed that for a few clients, and we're like, okay, we are very good at this because maybe we have a proprietary software that helps us do this, or maybe we have someone in-house who's very good at it, love it, whatever. What if we could find more people like that? Well, I would ask the question, okay, who would care the most about this problem of struggling with localization or struggling to localize their content and still grow their organic traffic, right? And so I would look at different elements. I wouldn't think of niching or demographic or firmographic. I would ask questions such as, let me tell you. Yes, they're like the type of business or their business size, of course, but there's other stuff like the specific role. It could be the structure of the company. It could be the revenue level. It could be the location. It could be the income level of the particular person if you're not after companies, if you're after individual. It could be education level, values even, or the expertise level. So you basically really try to reverse engineer of the people who have this problem, which ones really, really care about that the most, so that when I reach out to this company, the likelihood that they say, yeah, actually we're struggling with that is super high or much higher than the average. So, and then once you have that, this is when you have a strong segmentation, and others will call it niching down. It's the same thing. And this is when you have something that is very crisp. So, if you go back to SEO for law firms, again, localization, okay, law firms, but is it law firms everywhere, or is it particularly in the US because maybe they have problems that others don't have? And then is it any type of law firm, or are we talking about maybe personal injury legal firms that have like specific needs that are even deeper? Again, specificity, right? Like I would go deeper. Okay, law firms, there's thousands and thousands serving them. Let's go deeper, one level higher, right? What are very specific problems that personal injury lawyers, because maybe we have them in our client base way more than average, what are those problems that they have that average law firms don't really care about, but for some reason, this is a bigger deal for them? And so, yeah, this is how you dig in. This is how you really go specific into a niche or whatever you want to call it. But it comes from a meaningful differentiation. It's not an arbitrary decision, just like law firms. No, it's you need to kind of think of the reason why they would pick you above anyone else. And I'll finish with this, because I know I've been talking for a long time now. The reason why those people would pick you over a more established, trusted, bigger company is because you reduce the risk for them. Meaning that when you are able to say, we are solving those problems in that way others don't care about, you minimize the risk by saying we understand you, by showing them that like the way you serve them is just unlike any other, something that they really care about. So you minimize the risk for them. You help become the least risky option, not necessarily the best, but the least risky. And that's so important. People don't pick the best thing, they pick the least risky. So that helps you with the differentiation. That's how you compete with bigger brands, by really creating something meaningful that they care about instead of trying to be like everyone else, because then you don't have anything meaningful.
Thank you for mentioning in this last sentence that's how you compete with bigger brands, because all that sorry, I will keep naming it niching down. It only helps when you're starting out, because once you define a very narrow niche and you are so unique in it because everyone else wants to go broader, and you become the leader in this space, the next logical step is expand your positioning. Is it not? This is why those bigger brands are able to serve. And this is what is happening to Ahrefs, to be honest, because we started as a backlink checker. We were adding more and more tools, so we became an SEO platform. And now as we have all the tools for SEO, we're starting to add more different tools, and we're calling ourselves a market intelligence platform. So instead of niching down and determining a very specific kind of subset of the market as our positioning, we're going the other way around because we want more people to be our customers.
Yes. So that's one way to grow. So people struggle with that idea because they see the end result of Ahrefs, right? They see where you are now, and they want to be like you, so they start where you are right now. But exactly as you said, you need to start from like what is the tiniest advantage you can get by offering something meaningful to a small group, so that you can generate revenue and have growth and have some sort of a momentum, and then you use those resources to grow again and grow again. But some business owners and some businesses are more than happy to stay with the segment they have, like the SEO firm for law, this SEO agency for law firm, for example. They're probably happy where they are. They don't need to add other type of clients. They might go deeper into the service they offer for that group. So it depends. You can expand the segment definition. You can expand the problems that you offer, that you solve. But after a while, and that might be a good segue to the next stage, unless you have more question on this, is that at some point, your unique positioning is impossible to reach. Meaning, you cannot honestly say we are the only one that does this for this group. Like Ahrefs is not in a position to say you have a unique positioning anymore. Let's be like, if we're being truthful, you don't. Yeah. And that's fine, because now you have a size, you have a market share in your category that is extremely high. So you have advantages now that others, smaller brands, don't have. And so now you can double down on distinctiveness, which you also have in some way. to complement. But yes, this is why big brands, like some people would say, oh, but Nestle or whatever, like they do everything like the others, and yet they're successful. Yeah, but they are successful not because of their positioning anymore, because they're successful because they're big, and they are successful because they've done all the steps all the way to this. They didn't start big, offering everything to everyone.
Yeah, Amazon started from, sorry for another big brand example, but Amazon started from selling just books. Then I believe they online, added music. And after adding music, I think there was another step. So yeah, they were expanding kind of in waves. They didn't become an everything store right off the bat. They were, so this step makes a lot of sense for me. For launching a business and for being successful, you have to niche down, you have to find that unique positioning. And yeah, I do see how inside foraging is very helpful at that stage, because your potential customers are kind of helping you identify what exactly is that they need, and if that aligns with what you want to do. Let's put it like this.
Yeah. So
let's move on to the third step.
Yeah. So just to summarize, right? So unique positioning isn't about being different just to be different. It's about finding a meaningful difference by solving overlooked problems for a specific group of people and doing it better than anyone else, right? So it's quite specific, but again, it's important. So you want to go beyond direct competitors. You don't want to just think about competitors like SEO agencies. It could be using software yourself, whatever. And something we didn't talk about, but we won't have time, which is fine. Don't forget to tap into irrational struggles, what I call irrational struggles or emotional struggles or whatever you want to call it, meaning the struggles that are not necessarily something that is like make more money or struggling to do X, like a system or something that is quite rational and scientific, but more like status and things that people struggle with. Maybe as an SEO agency owner, they see other agencies to be super successful and they're jealous of them. They see an update on LinkedIn. They're like, oh, they have 2x more revenue than us. What the fuck should we be doing? There's a lot of irrational struggles that you can tap into that give you an advantage if you manage to serve them in some way.
Now let's move on to distinctive brand, the third step.
Yeah. So in that step again, that's it's like when you are reaching a level like Ahrefs where your market share in a specific category is high, it means you have advantages that others don't. Mainly, and that's been proven by research over decades, over different industries, different countries, the higher your market share, the less likely people are to churn, and therefore the more customer will be loyal, and the less you will lose clients to smaller brands. The opposite is true. As a smaller brand with a lower market share, you will lose more clients to bigger brands. You can't do anything about that. Your churn rate will be higher, and your customer less loyal. Right. So that's one of the law. I think it's called the double jeopardy law from the book called How Brands Grow, by the
Byron Sharp.
One of the best book ever written in marketing because it's scientific stuff. There's a few principles there. I highly encourage everyone to read it. So at some point, you're starting to get advantage in your own category and your market size just by being big, right? Your share of voice is higher. People recommend you even if they've never fucking used you. I'm sure that happens a lot with Ahrefs. You have a lot of advantages, right? It's true, isn't it?
True. It's like, true.
It happens all the time because you're known, and you become the least risky. Like, what are the chances we're gonna find a software that is shit if they have so many customers and everybody's talking about them, right? But again, if you reach that stage, you are competing against SEMrush and Moz, maybe not so much anymore, and other big SEO tools. But then you enter, as you said, marketing intelligence. So now it's HubSpot and bim, and now your market share decreases, right? So what do you do? Well, you develop what's called distinctiveness. And again, that's not from my work. It's not me who inventing those terms, all the stuff I'm mentioning. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants here. I'm learning from other people who are much smarter than me. But distinctiveness is about the ability to create memories in people's minds, to associate yourself in people's mind with something that others don't have. And it doesn't make any sense. I don't know if you've seen the campaign comparethemarket.com in the UK. It's very, very well-known ad campaign where they did a concept where it's like compare the meerkat with a Russian accent, and it's two meerkats. right? With like a Russian accent, and that's it. And because when you say compare the market with a Russian accent, it sounds like market. Compare the market, right? And
You have
they
a very
run
good
with
Russian
that.
accent for a French
Yeah,
person.
thank you. Yeah, I've practiced before this. So this makes no sense. Why a meerkat? Why Russian accent? It makes absolutely zero sense. They only sell like business comparison website, like where you can find deals. It makes no sense. And yet it's highly distinctive because they are the only one that have meerkat as a mascot playing on the Russian accent. So that's an audio thing as well. So it creates, it carves a little space in people's brain where they are the only one, right? It just they're unique there, and that's it. So that means the next time they think about, okay, let me try to compare insurance, I need to switch insurance, the likelihood that they'll think of compare the market will be slightly higher than if they did not do that. Now, it's not a bulletproof strategy. It's not like 100% of the time. You slightly increase the chances that some people will think of you first or second compared to the rest, right? So that's why distinctiveness is super important when you are at your stage, for example, or when maybe you are happy with your positioning, you feel like you've reached the plateau, you don't want to go up market or whatever. You want to just triple down on it.
I noted a phrase called radical differentiation, right?
Yeah.
From one of your posts on LinkedIn, I believe.
It's Marty Neumeyer who wrote the book Zag, who coined the term.
I believe it belongs to the concept of distinctive brand in the third step in your methodology, because you described what it is, to which I agree, but how to develop it.
Yeah. So how do you do that? So again, if you now that we have the core ingredients of unique positioning, so the job alternative, etc., we need to develop new ones based on that work. So the first one that I call is the monster. So I believe to create a distinctive brand, you need to know what you are fighting against, and not just in a bullshit way where Ahrefs would fight against SEMrush. That's not it. It's more like, how can you rally people around something that is causing them pain, something that is basically causing them the struggles. So if you go back to the SEO agency for law firms, why are those law firms struggling with those specific struggles that others are not struggling with? Maybe it's because of the regulations going on or whatever. And so you want to define a thing that you can point the finger at and say, this is why you're struggling. But it's not because of you. It's not your fault if you're struggling. And it's unlikely to be direct competitors. So a lot of people think, picking an enemy or villain or whatever, they pick their direct competitor like SEMrush is your monster. It's very unlikely unless everyone is using them or switching back and forth, unless like everyone has a phone, like, and you can pick iPhone if you're Samsung, potentially if it causes them struggle. But most times it's not that. Most time it's the status quo, the thing that they are currently doing. It could be just something that is much bigger than them, like the culture of the category where everyone is spammy and bullshitty, and that's why they're struggling. So you want to point the finger at something so that you can start rallying people around you. That's the first step.
Mm-hmm. Monster, give me more of them. Monster is one of the frameworks for differentiation, for distinctiveness.
For distinctiveness. So that's the first ingredient. It'll make sense in a bit. So it builds up. It's like Lego bricks, right? You add them, and then at the end, once I give you all of them, it'll feel clearer. But just for the sake of it, let's trust the process for a second, right? So there's 4 types of monster. You'll have the corporate giant. So in that case, it'd be SEMrush or Google. Like, I work with a lot of ad PPC like consultant, and one key thing they struggle with is the fact that it's ever changing. The tool is always changing and they don't tell you why. And so clients struggle with that. And so it's easy to point a finger at Google, like the big G, and say it's their fault. But that's mostly that doesn't happen that often to be able to pick a big company that is responsible for the struggles that your people struggle with. So the second one is the alternative solution. So when I was working for Hotjar, which is a behavior analytics tool, you can see where people click on your website. the monster was using traditional web analytics, not Google Analytics, but more the fact that you can't just rely on them. They're great, and we don't aim to replace them. However, they don't tell you why people do stuff. You don't see what they do. You only see numbers. And so if you want to really understand what people do, you need to go deeper than just that. So you can see how we don't say it's your fault. We don't say it's Google's fault. We just say that the alternative solution that you're currently using, meaning solely relying on Google Analytics, is not good enough. The third one will be the culture of the category, right? For example, at the start of the book, I point the finger at the toxic growth hack, marketing bullshit kind of culture. And it's causing a lot of marketers to be overwhelmed, to feel like they're missing out all the time, to feel like there's new tools that they need to check or else they'll miss out, to feel like they're not smart enough, to feel like, everyone is making six figure and I'm struggling. It's not their fault if they're struggling. And to me, it's because of the culture of the category, the fact that marketing culture is rotten to the core. Everyone is trying to fucking, convince people to buy something they don't really need, blah, blah. That's my own point of view, right? But
all of that is within pick an enemy, right?
Yeah, picking a monster, yeah. Enemy, monster, villain,
is
whatever
there
you
a
want to call
different
it.
framework to this? Instead of going deep into picking a monster, is there another way to be distinctive?
So again, a monster really helps you to put a flag in the ground. It really helps to answer the next ones, but we can move on to the next stages, but the next steps in that stage. But it really helps to
so you still need to have a monster against which your brand is taking a stance.
Yeah, it helps, and you don't have to say it out loud. You don't have to put it in your copy of your homepage. But I find it very helpful to create this kind of that's the thing we're gonna develop against. It just creates an anchor.
So the reason why I'm asking for more frameworks is because when I think of examples of Ryanair, who make fun of being cheap and not giving their customers almost any service at all.
Yeah.
Does this fall under the monster framework?
So I would argue that I think every single distinctive brand will have one, even if they don't say it out loud. So for Ryanair, which is an Irish company, by the way, which is the only duopoly in the world, I think, in big companies. So you have Aer Lingus and then your Ryanair that have roughly the same market share, right? Which is, anyway, that's a little tidbit.
But they are distinctive, right? I don't know anyone else in that category.
They are highly distinctive. I mean, they are doing airline and stuff, but they are committing to offering something what I think is, to go back to what I was saying to you a few minutes ago, they went at it with sheer intensity. They didn't go 80% of the way, 90% of the way. You have to pay for fucking everything, right? And so the monster is, I would say, what is causing people struggle, the fact that they can't afford to go away on holiday. And so clearly they're pointing the finger at the culture of the category, all of the other companies that are just charging for everything, making it much more expensive than it could be. And so that's their anchor, right? The anchor is everyone else is ripping you off. You don't need all that fucking benefit. If you want, you can pay for it, but everyone else is ripping you off. We are the alternative to this, right? So it creates that anchor. And then when you talk about distinctiveness and the other elements that you can add to it, it makes it easier. For example, their ads where or their testimonials of people complaining, thanks Ryanair, your seats are so uncomfortable and blah blah, and you're yeah, but you still fucking paid for the flight because it was cheap, right? If you didn't want to, you can go to the monster, you can go back to where you come from, you can pay €200 for a single a flight, right? So it helps create this anchor where you don't move away from it anymore. It creates this certainty, this foundation to put you against.
So for me, if I would conceptualize what they're doing, I wouldn't call it a monster. I would call it taking things to extreme. We are a cheap airline. How cheap are you? Well, we won't we'll give you cheap tickets, but you get nothing. You only get a flight, but it's cheap. So they basically, with being extreme with the limited service that they're offering, they're kind of promoting the fact that they're cheap. So they're taking cheap to an extreme.
Yeah, but I understand. I agree. But remember the question I asked myself, right? Which was, how do I create some sort of a structure and process that brands and businesses can go through, that if they do it that way and they do it properly, they are more likely to stand out. They are more likely to stand the fuck out, right?
Yeah.
So it's I have to kind of create the structure that gives the steps that people must take, right?
This is why I'm asking any alternatives to Monster, but you basically...
There's no alternative.
You mean that
it's
like
there.
all roads go back to Rome? So any way to use distinctive brand, distinctiveness, radical
Start
differentiation or whatever, it would eventually go towards some kind of enemy at
the source of it. Maybe you want to find another one, maybe for Ahrefs or whatever, but like that's the thing. I can find
Duolingo,
a monster for everyone.
Unhinged owl that everyone is making fun of.
So that's a distinctive brand asset. That's a mascot. But Duolingo, what are they fighting? What's their monster, right? Like if we try to reverse engineer it, what is the thing that is causing people struggle that they help them with? Well, they say it's free, fun, and effective, right? Well, like if I look at their website, they say it's free, fun, and effective. Let me pick on fun. They imply, therefore, that the traditional way of learning a language is not fucking fun. You go through books and it's hard and whatever. And they also imply that it's not that effective because you don't have like constant repetition and it's not small learning that you add day to day, whatever. It's like you read the book or you watch a movie and then you stop. So I would, like, if you take the opposite of that, it means paid, not fun, like boring, and not so effective, right? So they point the finger indirectly at the traditional way of learning languages, which is like through courses and through like lectures and through the school system that is like probably using something like that. So yeah, that's the culture of the category. It's just the fact that that's the way language is being sold, is being taught for most time, and they're doing it free, fun, and effective. Again, they don't say that out loud. They don't say, by the way, our monster is this, and this. This is not what I'm saying. It's just that it creates an anchor.
Yeah, I still see it. The problem is consistency, and fun is one way to add consistency, because you cannot be consistent at the things. It's easier to be consistent with things that are fun, and the whole kind of character of this owl that is stalking people, sending them those unhinged messages and whatnot. It's about making you return to the app and be consistent and have your streak or whatnot. But yeah, this is not a podcast to go deep into Duolingo.
No, but it's interesting. So we're not talking exactly about the same thing. Again, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to compartmentalize the distinctiveness, to break it down into smaller elements that you can play with and add to it. But I went to their approach page, and here's what they say. We believe that anyone can learn a language with Duolingo, okay? Our free bite-sized lesson feel more like a game than a textbook. Okay. So in my head, because I've been obsessing over it for fucking years, of course I'm seeing what I want to see. But in my head, in the structure I'm trying to put into, the traditional way of learning with textbook is probably their monster. I'm just putting it in my own, and that's fine. And maybe they don't think about it this way, and that's perfectly fine, right? But clearly they have something that they're trying to change, and finding a monster is helpful for that.
Okay. What else goes into figuring out your distinctive brand?
So once you have a monster, you can develop your point of view. And so point of view has been shared on LinkedIn. Everyone says, you need to have a point of view, you need to share point of view, content, and whatever. I don't mean you need to be contrarian, you need to be aggressive, you need to say stupid stuff just to be noticed. I don't mean you need to be like me, you don't need to have a French accent, you don't need to use curse words. That's not what a point of view is, right? So a point of view is a collection of messages inserted into everything you do and say, showing the people in your segment you're committed to protecting them and earning their trust. So it's not something that you said to be contrarian, it's something to say it's a bad signal, right? It's the signal you send to your people to say, hey, we're on your side, we care about you, this is why we're doing this. It's basically the reason why you're doing this, right? It's not just be contrarian for the sake of it. It's like, hey, we are here to slay the monster. We say that everywhere. this is why we believe we are doing this, right? Duolingo, let's keep using this example. You can use this following structure for a point of view. So what is the common belief? What others tend to think or do? What tends to happen as a result? What's the effect that this has? What's the impact? Why others should believe you? And what should be done instead? So if we use Duolingo, most people think that learning languages requires a textbook. Okay, what happens? What the consequence of the result? As a result, language learning is difficult, not so fun, boring. What's the impact? Well, you don't learn fucking languages. You just stopped after 2 days. It's not fun. What's the proof? Well, we've done like research on how people learn, and we found out that bite-sized learning every day is much more effective than reading a fucking textbook. Solution? Duolingo. Right? So that's their core point of view. And then everything they do is weaved into that. It's like, you visualize this node. It connects to everything they do. The L, the way they talk, every single thing is a product of that point of view, which is the expression of how they're fighting the monster, right? Everything. And like Ryanair is the same, Other airlines like to overcharge for everything. What tends to happen is, you're losing a lot of money to go and travel around the world. The effect is you don't travel as much as you want, maybe. The proof, well, you've done something that is quite different, offering cheap flights, and everyone is buying them, right? And so that's what you do. So it just creates this. Once you have the monster as your anchor, the point of view is the next step because it's your way to express it. And that's how you build trust. That's how you build trust. That's how you get noticed. You don't do it for the sake of it. You don't do it to be contrarian. You do it for a reason. And that's your bad signal.
Okay, that... how do I put it?
It's shit.
No. What I'm trying to say is that I don't feel that this framework necessarily creates something that stands the fuck out. It's almost what I'm expecting from you with the title of the book, using a swear word right on the title, and having a huge rooster. What it's orange, red. I'm not very good with colors. It's creating someone kind of controversial, polarizing, something that people don't expect to see. And there's no other app that has a mascot that would have the same kind of personality as the Duolingo one.
Yeah. But
so
to compartmentalize things, to arrive at where you want to go, which is more the branding element, the distinctive assets, you need that first. I mean, again, to create a process out of it and to make it repeatable. So what you're talking about here is distinctive brand assets, which is the next part of distinctiveness. Once you know what you're fighting against, once you have a point of view like the bad signal, then you can develop a set of assets that are highly distinctive. And one type of asset that is super distinctive, that is very much unused or not as used as others, are like the type of mascots / characters. So science have shown, experiment from the same group, from Byron Sharp colleagues, they show that the mascot is the most memorable for people, and something that they remember well, that is highly distinctive. So, but that's not the only one. So assets could be faces, because we're hardwired to notice them. That's part of our brain. So human faces, or like faces that look almost like human but not so much, like the meerkat or Duolingo, it's a face. Colors, because colors are processed in the occipital lobe, right, which is a different part of the brain. Phrases, stand the fuck out, taglines, stuff like that, because again, that's processed in different parts of the brain. So a color, a logo or shape, something with a face, a sound, or a short phrase. That's kind of the minimum viable things you can hit to create a distinctive brand, which is, I think, where you want it to go. So this is why when I looked at my assets and how I can redevelop Stand the Fuck Out, because my rooster, his name is Roger, by the way, my rooster wasn't there last year. Why did I do it? Well, I made a list of what is typically done by folks in my industry in this type of stuff I do. So I listed down type of colors, type of logos, the faces, do they have any sound, short phrase, and I identified the things I could double down on that I already have and something that I was missing out on. So the sound, my French accent, I double down on it. I don't try to fucking fix it. I do swear, but I swear naturally. I don't force it. So I'm not going to change that. Colors tend to be quite muted, like black, blue. It's just generic stuff. Again, I'm making generalization here. I'm not necessarily saying everyone does that, but on average, that's the average, right? And then the face thing, apart from their own faces, like their personal brand or whatever, almost no one uses mascots in my industry, right? Almost no one. And so I was like, okay, let's play with that. Let's see what comes out. And so I work with a great designer to help me to help me create this. And so now I have what I feel is a distinctive brand. It's just the assets are distinctive, but I needed the point of view. I needed the monster to arrive at this point because the face of the rooster, like the brief that I gave the designer, included all of that. This is my point of view. This is what I believe. This is what we're fighting against. This is why the rooster has this unhinged expression on his face. It's not like rooster that is smiling, right? It's like it's looking at you with his eyes saying like, who the fuck are you, right? And again, that might sound like a detail, but I needed the thing before in order to arrive at a brief that was so crisp and so simple that anyone could understand, right? Let me just give you another example briefly. I talked to this woman called Simon Bruni a few years ago, and she created a demolition company in New Orleans after the Hurricane Katrina. And everything that she does, her brand is pretty much the same as everyone else, apart from two things, the name and color. So the name is called Demo Diva. So most other demolition companies would be like Demolition Extreme Limited, that kind of like stuff. So Demo Diva clearly stand out. And the second thing is all over fucking excavators and materials are painted pink, right? That's it. So the rest is the same. It's still a demolition company, right?
This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm looking for, kind of ways to stand out and ways to take things to the extreme instead of blending in. Because again, Ahrefs is in a way being criticized for its hard to pronounce, hard to spell brand name. And instead of blending in to rebrand ourselves into something that people can grasp more easily, we're leaning into it. Every time 100%. I post on Twitter or LinkedIn a simple phrase, you don't pronounce it Ahrefs, you pronounce it Ahrefs, and I use exactly the same spelling, people go nuts. They like it, they retweet it, they add jokes like, oh, I always thought it's Ahrefs, and they spell it exactly the same. Because in your head you do, like when you read the sentence and it's the same word, you do pronounce it like in a couple different ways how you've heard it. And
that's a great example.
Into it. Yeah, and we've leaned into it even more recently because I asked people to record me videos how they pronounce Ahrefs in their country, because we noticed it's quite country specific, quite location specific. And now we have a video collection. So if you search for how to pronounce Ahrefs, I think the video is still not up, but it would probably be up, if not today, then tomorrow. We would have like a minute-long video with people from all over the world pronouncing it. And at the end, there's an Easter egg because some guy said that he's a representative of Klingons. And in Klingon language, he did like his own pronunciation, which was fun. So it is kind of example instead of just giving people, this is the official pronunciation, we're making fun of it, we're leaning in, and we're being known for our awkward pronunciation. It's becoming our thing.
And so you're not blending in, you're not trying to blend everything in so it becomes average and palatable. Instead, you're doubling down on a few things that people notice. So that's one exercise to extract those assets, right? It's literally pay attention to what others notice. This method is about identifying and exaggerating your most distinctive traits to identify branding elements and stand the fuck out. So that's exactly what you're doing. I know MailChimp did something similar in the past where they were like people were confusing. And so they created a full campaign about it. And so, triple down on it, double down on it. That's a great example. My French accent is at a much smaller scale, something that people notice from the start. And I just double down on it. So what are the things that people notice? The small little things that people notice. Pay attention to them. Don't take them for granted. Don't try to change them. Ahrefs as a name is perfect example. But another way would be to explore the negative space, which I kind of explained early on without saying it. It's like, what are the things people are not doing? Our brain is wired to notice what is there. That's how we survive, right? What is like, we need to, like when we hear a sound or when we see fucking tiger in the forest or whatever, we notice what is there. We struggle, we don't do the opposite naturally. So you need to force your brain to say, what is not there? What are they not doing? What are they not saying? How are they not behaving, right? And you force yourself to ask this question, and you put them out, and you will see that your brain will start thinking about it in the background, and then you can come back later, a few days after, and you'll see that it's actually quite that people don't really think about that this way. So negative space is another way to get into the distinctive brand asset, like which I did with the mascot. Like, what are marketing agency owners or consultants not using their assets? And almost always it's like a mascot or a face that is a bit different than just my face.
Can you think of any examples where brands or companies took this too far, where it was no longer interesting or fun, but it was offending or stupid?
I think so. Let me give you an example from a marketing agency that I was looking into. I'll tell you where they could have gone completely wrong. So the marketing agency is called Dark Horse, and their entire brand is kind of a detective board style. You know, like in Batman, the latest Batman, the very dark, like environment of it. So you have like exactly like your meme that you created recently, where you do the research thing. Well, more dark than that, like the detective board style. So dark, like red with stuff connected to each other, like this dark, somber thing. So they went all in with that brand, like all in. And then all their copies, like forensically good PPC and SEO. They go, we'll bury your competitors. We help e-commerce companies parade the bodies of their competition while swimming in money, right? So they go very far.
This gets awkward.
So, but they stop. So meaning they are going all the way into one direction, going very far, like horror style, like detective board, something that is completely out of what people typically believe to be an SEO agency. But everything else is still very much in line with the SEO world, meaning their website architecture, their blogs, the way they talk about their services. They don't go too far. So I would argue that you can go too far when people don't really realize what you are. Meaning, if Demo Diva didn't call herself Demo Diva, more like Diva Destruction, and then she wouldn't use normal fucking machinery, and when you start being vague into what you do, what you offer, and you go too far in those directions, then that's when you lose people. So you don't want to do that. Instead, you want to pick one or two key brand assets to double down on, and then use the typical things that are being done or said in your category so that you don't lose people.
Thanks for reminding me about the podcast meme, because again, it's an example of how I think of positioning, distinctiveness, differentiation, and all of that, because a marketing podcast is such a commodity. Like everyone and their mom is doing this. And it's quite ironic that I, who just started a podcast last year, saying this to you who started the podcast 7 years ago, you've seen your fair share of people starting their podcasts and most of them dying. But yeah, how do you differentiate in that sea of sameness? So again, back to your concept of inside foraging, I noticed that people are complimenting me whenever I push back on my guests, whenever I'm not just agreeing, like yes, and if I have some other idea in my head, I'm not afraid to speak out, which I'm sure you've noticed during this interview, because I'm genuinely also interested in these concepts, and I want to share my thoughts and kind of see how you would address my concerns or my vision to this. And it seems that people are liking it, so I'm leaning into it. But I don't know how to use it in positioning of the podcast. Hey, this is a podcast where Tim disagrees with people. I'm not sure. It doesn't sound well.
Let's go into that. Right? So this is a great example. So one of the key stuff that people notice, which is connected to a struggle, by the way, is the fact that you contradict people. You go deep, you ask questions, you almost play devil's advocate on purpose to put people so that they let loose and they don't necessarily follow a script. So why is that working? Because you solve a key struggle, which is they want to learn something new. They don't want to learn like the basic stuff that everyone is saying. They want to know the details. They want to know the nuances. They want to go deeper, right? Just to do an average, by the way. So what I would say here is, okay, let's say we push the limits here. What would a show, I'm not using podcast on purpose because I think it's a bit, if we look at other industry, which is a good way to do that. Let's connect the dots to something completely different. In what other industry or world even do you have this dynamic of someone completely disagreeing with someone else?
Politics.
Okay. Exactly what?
What do you mean exactly what?
Sorry. When you say politics, what do you see? Like in what context?
Yeah, any show, any debates where people are discussing an important issue, it would be all about disagreeing with each other and proving their point of view.
Okay, so for example, here I would say, what if we use some codes of that world and apply it to the podcast world? Meaning, instead of sitting down behind a mic like every other podcast host on existence, can you create a fake, like a typical stand that political people would actually stand behind, during debates, the typical white thing with a little mic that goes up. Background, instead of having like yet another office background, why don't you create some sort of a thing that looks like a debate on TV? Why don't you use, I don't know, instead of putting a hat, like maybe you put a wig, like a blonde wig, and look like an asshole. But like that single thing, we can go even further. Like that's just literally thinking about it quickly. Like if you use the code of others, that's when it becomes very interesting, because that's how you're going to get this being distinctive. So it's not a podcast anymore. It's a show. Yes, it's on podcast, it's on YouTube, but it's a show. And the other guest is required to do something specific, like so that it feels like a debate, right? Like, I don't know, maybe you send them the same the mic so they all look the same, or maybe the backdrop, it doesn't cost you much to ship or whatever, right? So you go all in. Like if it's really that you can go all in on, that's one way to do it, right? But there's so many other ways you have contradiction. Like it could be in the court, right? It could be a lawyer, defense lawyer.
Yeah, again, not to get too deep into the example of this specific podcast, but it's not my goal to disagree with people. It either happens or not, and it would be stupid if we would design the set in the way of debates, and then I actually agree with the person fully because we kind of think the same way. Anyway, what I was trying to say is that exactly because podcast is such a commodity, and it's hard to differentiate and it's hard to break through into people's attention, I'm doing those memes because people notice the meme, and the meme is about the podcast, and they're making this mental note about Ahrefs podcast. This is something we discussed in your Meerkat example. So people might not go and listen to the podcast right away, but then a week after, they would need to go on a run, or they would have some boring chores around the house, and they would, what do I listen to? Oh, I remember that meme of Tim doing with Ahrefs podcast with his notes, how he prepares. Let me give it a chance. So this is the exact way of how I am trying to create something distinctive around my podcast without necessarily having much positioning in it, because I don't say people do compliment me about the fact that I disagree with my guests, but it's not in the meme. It's not what I promote. I promote the fact that I prepare a lot.
Yeah. So then, like, naturally what I would ask is, how can you double down on that more? So you've done the great meme of the research stuff, and the previous one with the champagne bottle.
Yeah,
that was really funny. Right, I remember that as well. But again, probably not the best example because I overanalyze what Ahrefs does a lot. But is there any way to double down on that? Like, if it really works, then can you put money behind it in ads, LinkedIn ads, stuff like that, like where it's the meme because people connect with that? Can you create more? Can you create some sort of a system where you create more, like where it's every week do you drop a new meme without fail? Once you know that something is noticed, then let's fucking go all in, right?
But then again, back to the kind of tools and methods you can use to differentiate yourself. You yourself seem to be leaning into controversy quite a bit because the book is called Stand the Fuck Out. Your podcast was called or is called Everyone Hates Marketers.
Yeah.
So you're kind of again leaning into the controversial angle. Oh my God, why do people hate marketers? What is this guy talking to his guests about? But is your podcast about people hating marketers, or interviews are essentially just like this one?
Well, first of all, the podcast, we might talk about it a bit. The podcast is done in its current form. I can explain why in detail later, but is it really controversial, right? Like, is it what I'm saying from the last an hour, 42 minutes controversial to you?
No, I mean, you do controversial things, but in your frameworks, you're fairly tame. So you didn't tell me look for ways to include a curse word in your marketing materials or hide it somewhere or try to piss off like some people.
Because it's not a book about how to be like me, right? It's like I'm leaning on things that people notice that I naturally do. Right? And that's just me, and I double down on that. This is never about you copying me. It's about what process can you use to arrive at a place that is like you, that is like unique, whatever. But it's just your own thing. It's not me. So, right? So that's one of the criteria I wanted the book.
Good point. Let's go into your book as in the kind of product that you have created, not the idea and the methodology behind it. You teased kind of a topic to me, why it took you so long, 3 years to write a book, and how you were scammed for $36,000 in the process. So tell me about that. I'm very keen to know.
So 3 years ago, I had developed my first version of the methodology. I was working one-to-one with clients, and that was a good way for me to refine it. And then I decided, okay, let's get to writing. As you know, I'm not from an English-speaking country. English is my second language, and I always thought that writing a book like that, I kind of need some help and accountability. I also know I didn't want to be on my own doing this thing, or else I would never fucking do it. So I chose to work with a hybrid kind of publisher that would essentially, I retain all the rights of the book. I do whatever I want with it. I can write what I want, but they help me with the packaging of it, the cover, like the process, the editing, the proofreading, all of stuff. And it went well until they essentially went bankrupt because their CEO was pissing on the money, essentially, like pissing all the money they had generated for his own gain, for his own personal brand and all of that. They were highly in debt. They had more than 200 people working for them at one stage. They were very successful, very well known, and they just went bankrupt just like that. So they're based in Texas, meaning that I couldn't get any money back because they had no money left. And I'm in Europe. I hired a lawyer to help me out. There's nothing to be done. All the money is gone. No one will get their money back. So I paid $36,000 upfront to have them. It went well until it didn't, right? Until it stopped completely. They essentially said, we are rehiring a skeleton crew. They got bought by another company, and messy. I didn't want to take part of it. So that took that really, really had a huge impact on me emotionally, and all of that was really hard for a while. So I stopped working on it for a bit. I went back to one-to-one coaching, went to consulting, went back to refining the methodology. And then when I felt like I was ready to go again, that's when I started again. And I work with a crowd called Tilt Publishing, which is a similar model, but trustworthy people, owned by Lulu, which is a print-on-demand company, and run by Joe Pulizzi, who's a content marketing maestro who wrote a few books on it and is very well known in the industry. So he reached out to me. They were launching that service, and I was one of their first beta author to go through it. So they basically lift me up. They pick me up from the ground and help me to finish this thing. And I didn't want it to be a simple one idea book, as I said multiple times. But that meant a lot of work went into the details, you know? Like, it's easy to take for granted when you read a book, but like so many decisions on so many pages are being done, like the title structure and the subtitle structure, and as I said, every word mattered to me. So I wanted it to be crisp and straight to the point, but also emotionally, involving, so that you can read stories and still laugh a bit. So that took a long time to refine. Like, the manuscript was ready years ago. It's just like the refinement of it to the point of feeling like, okay, this is what I want out of this. And I finish with this. The most impactful thing I've ever done for my business was to get beta readers to rip apart the early version of the manuscript. So I did 3 rounds of beta reading. I selected 20 people ish per round, people who were exactly my target audience for the book, and they essentially went through a Google Doc style document. It wasn't Google Doc, it's a software called Help This Book, which is a bit like Google Doc, but it's a bit more closed. You can't comment anything you want. It's a bit more pointed towards book. Anyway, that activity, which took me nearly 9 months to do, because you collect the feedback, you make sense of it, you select the ones you don't want, you remove the ones you select the ones you want, you remove the ones you don't want, because I had a strong vision for it, blah blah blah. But that turned into a book I was so proud of, and that I knew would be helpful to people, because I had 3 rounds of people ripping it apart until they were all satisfied with it in some way, until I was satisfied. So if you're writing a non-fiction book, I can't recommend that enough. If you know what you want out of it. If you don't know how to interpret feedback, if you don't have a strong vision, like the specific stuff we mentioned, like no brand names, no big brand, no war vocabulary, if you don't have these guidelines, then it might be the opposite to what you want. But if you do, this is the most helpful thing ever. So that's why it took me so long, and that's why I got scammed 36 grand.
So this was the single most impactful exercise you've done that helped you turn a mediocre book into a great book, again from the notes that you sent me. That was it?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm such a good teaser, am I not?
Great. And the final question I have for you, 2 hours almost flew by. That was pretty fast. Unconventional ways you're promoting the book without a huge budget. Another thing you promised to share with me on this interview.
Well, I didn't promise. I said you could ask me. I didn't say I would say what it was. But so unconventional ways. So one key way we did was instead of launching on Amazon, we launched self-published. So we picked that monster to be the big boy Amazon, who's retaining most of my money instead of letting me earn money from my work and blah, blah, blah. So we pointed the finger at Bezos in particular. I had like a banner that was going through the website saying, fuck Bezos. It was just a bit of fun, right? So now we're on Amazon as well. You can buy it on Amazon. But for the launch, I thought it was funny. So we created 3 packages, Basic, Plus, and Pro. That doesn't really stand the fuck out, but you can't make everything stand the fuck out, right? There's some stuff you need to keep simple. But and we offered stuff like to make people talk. So you do that very well in Ahrefs. One key stuff we did was the fanny pack. The fanny pack, right?
Oh,
so
nice.
I designed it myself with Roger the Rooster on top of it. That's where I have all my little stickers. But everyone who would buy the Pro package would get it. And it was limited edition, meaning you can't get it anymore. It's over. So little things like that, little stuff that would make me laugh, that I found fun. So that's one way we did it. The other way that I would say is a bit unconventional is simply the fact that I've talked about the book before launching it for years. I literally talk about it in my list for years before, like the struggle and the 36 grand and the beta reading. And so I pre-launched the fuck out of it, right? And now I also treat it as a launch that never stops. Like I will never stop talking about that book until I have something better, which I doubt. And so you might call it maybe not that unconventional, but actually I think book authors really struggle with this. So I'm just marketing it as much as possible, and I've marketed it way before it was ready.
I can't believe that your book was sitting here with me all this time. It's here, but it just, oops.
You use it as a microphone stand.
It's holding my microphone along with Daniel Kahneman, so you're in a very good company.
Ooh, that's not allowed.
Yeah, so thanks a lot for sending me your book. That was very kind of you, and I enjoyed the personal touch of a little card that you added and the little keychain thing, and I think a couple stickers or something like this. So how many people did you send it to in this kind of package? I believe to promote word of mouth, because I immediately shared it on social media to support your book, and I believe a lot of people did that too. So how big was your launch list?
I only sent it to you. Well, do you think it was a marketing campaign?
No, seriously.
We sent it to 200, roughly 200 people. So essentially friends of the industry. So folks I've already interviewed on my podcast that I knew, folks I had contact with like you. But the thing I really wanted to avoid was I didn't want to ask for anything in return. Like, and I made clear, I don't know if you noticed, but on the card, I'd never say, can you share it? Right?
Yeah.
If you look at the negative space,
well, people do understand why they're being sent a book with all the goodies, right?
But I'm not trying to be pedantic about it and say, "Oh, please, I've sent it to you for free. Can you in exchange?" Right? I'm not trying to make it.
You're putting people in an uncomfortable situation where they have to say no, while they do understand why you're sending it to them anyway. So you don't have to ask. And if you don't ask, they won't say no. They just either do it or not. So I completely understand this.
Yeah. So I wrote every card myself. Like I made sure that I wrote personal card to everyone. It took a long time. The boxes, I boxed them up myself. They were all behind me in the office for a long time. I did everything manually. I could have hired someone to do it for me, but I wanted to make it feel more like organic, and that genuinely me and my daughter actually who helped me pack up. So that creates a bit of fun memories with her as well. She calls it the chicken book. She loves it. So that's also one of the ways I've promoted it, and not everyone shared it back or anything, but that wasn't the point for me whatsoever. Genuinely, I'm proud of that book. I know it's helpful. I know that it's not easy to go through, that it takes hard work, but I know it's helpful, and I want as many people as possible to fucking read it. Like that's it. That's as far as it goes.
Well, Louis, thanks a lot for taking the time to do this conversation with me. I think we dug fairly deep into your book and the concepts behind it. And I'm hoping that people who are interested to refine, improve, change their positioning would pick up your book and go even deeper than we went during this interview.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time, man. I appreciate it. Love what you do. Love what you do at Href. Keep standing the fuck out. Huh? Keep showing the way to people. Because you are, like, I could spend another 2 hours asking you the same question and all the stuff you do that are different. So keep at it, because it's very inspiring for me and for the rest of us.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks a lot for sticking till the very end of this episode. I guess that means you enjoyed it, right? Because if you did, I have to ask you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, or maybe click the follow button if you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify. Not sure if you know this, but subscriptions and follows are the strongest signal for these platforms to show this piece of content to more people. So I would really, really appreciate it if you would follow and subscribe. Thanks in advance, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.